we are meaning-making species. That's what we do. We take past experiences, try to learn from them for the present, and then infer into the future what we need to do for our actions, right? So in experience, we get flooded with neurotransmitters. We get flooded with cortisol, with all these things. And so when we get a memory triggered, something happens in, like, we're out in the hills one day and like the wind is hitting in a certain way, the slant of the light is a certain way, it reminds us and the memory goes back to maybe an incident, right? So our body remembers and then it starts spilling those neurotransmitters back into our system. And so that's what memory is, but what happens then is time starts to kind of collapse, right? Like history all of a sudden is present for us today in that moment. And then we're inferring into the future about our actions, which can cause anxiety and the other things about inferring. So now time starts doing this weird kaleidoscoping on us when we're talking about incidents and tragedy. So our job is to figure out how to not get disoriented by that sort of kaleidoscoping of hormones and time. So what the trick to doing about listening to stories of tragedy is to try to be present so that we have more and more faculties about where we are sitting right here, right now, and how that's going to inform our actions with response rather than reaction. I'm sure a lot of you have talked about that. What's reaction versus response? Reaction is that quick loop, unconscious reaction versus response, which is where we like put it through our frontal cortex, have a little bit more information around it, and then we can respond. So just discerning the difference between reaction and response. And our memories of stories and tragedy can do the reaction really easily if we don't conscientiously try to make it into the response kind of mechanism. How are people doing? We're launching right in. Good morning. I know, everyone's like, oh gosh, here we go. One thing, I used to work with Responder Alliance, and my good friend Laura McGladrey always says awareness and first and then choice, right? So if we're not aware of what's happening in our systems, we can't make choices about our response, right? And so first awareness, and that has to do with our internal environment as well as our external, right? You all are really good at taking in all kinds of awareness of environment, of space, of weather systems, all of it, like tons of awareness. And if we can apply that same thing internally to our internal awareness, then we have the chance to make responses earlier than when it just becomes a big, huge event. So just like metaphorically the map of our internal space, right? Like if we have maps that are only ridgelines and glaciers, we're only responding to like the big sort of like big events, like, oh my gosh, PTSD over here, the big, huge overwhelm. When really we're trying to fill in a nuanced perspective of where we are. So we start to fill in more detail about our responses to things. We have feelings, right? Feelings are just that, the neurotransmitter feelings. Emotions are the stories we lie on top of those feelings. So the more nuanced we can get, we can understand what story are we laying on top of the feelings we get, right? And so with that, we can start to get more understanding, more nuance. We get higher fidelity of our internal workings to where we actually know how to respond to real terrain, right? Rather than just a really rough map. So the really rough map is where sometimes we have to go when we're overwhelmed. We only have capacity for like gross sort of like happiness, sadness, that's it, But then if we have time and capacity to work into sort of like, what else are we knowing and what are we letting in? And to that point is that once we understand the terrain, then we can use discernment or like adjust our aperture of how much information we're ready to let in. So today, listening to stories, being able to kind of sense into sort of like, how much capacity do I have today to hear this, right? Like what, is this the day I actually need to subject myself to hearing really hard stories? And so what logistically that looks like is that, people here have probably been exposed to potentially traumatizing events, this concept. This is a short list, right? And it can be expanded or contracted relative to what profession you're in. But this is a common, so this is just logistically, like, are you walking into today because you know one of these stories firsthand? We just know that's bound to cause more of a reaction. Are you coming in depleted or overwhelmed already? So we know, and it doesn't even have to be with your profession. It can be a relationship strife. It can be just lack of sleep, totally unscientific number, but everything's 30% harder when you haven't slept, right? Everything is just harder. So overwhelm is easy. It's easier to sort of like have bigger responses when you're overwhelmed. Novel exposure, things you're like, oh shit, sorry, I'm swearing. I didn't even know that could happen, right? The first time you're exposed to something. Personal responsibility, right? A lot of you are holding lots of duty to act, lots of responsibility. When you hear these stories, it can stir up more emotion because of that. Extremes of exposure, the complexity, and if you know that there's some sort of conflict or tension around the situation, right? The public discourse, the family that didn't agree with how it went down, when there's more of that conflict, we know it's more likely to hit internally our system for overwhelm. So this is just for us to take that gross map from a distance, be like, okay, logistically, what's happening? Then, what then? So now the trick is to just check in with our bodies so that we get curious about what data it's telling us. They're so intelligent. Our body has stored so much information about all the ridgelines we've crossed, all of the weird experiences we've had. It's stored in there and we can listen to what it has to share with us. So first you just do a little body tracking. And when right here, right now, a lot of times what happens is we just are coming off of the socializing, coming off of this, and we don't get grounded in the here and now. And that's what will actually metabolize hard experiences. We take the history, that memory, and then we ground it into where we're sitting right now, next to our colleagues, next to people we know, in this room, in Bozeman, our feet are on the floor, and getting oriented to space and time. And then that way, once we're grounded, that information has a better chance of getting metabolized. So right now, just think about your feet on the floor. Are you feeling like you're perched on top of your chair and you're just hovering? Or are you actually like sunk down in the chair and the chair is catching you? That information is important. It seems so minor and ridiculous, but if it's a practice of doing it, it becomes more and more ability to integrate information. And especially when you're listening to these stories, you can just notice like, oh, I just raised off my chair. That's information. You're getting impacted in minor ways, and metabolizing it then is better than trying to do it later when it's like, oh my gosh, I'm already over the edge of the overwhelm. We talk a lot about breath and breathing, and so I'm not going to belabor this one, but one really quick, easy practice to do is to just do a really long exhale out to completely deflate your lungs just once. Because that, if anybody's a climber, if you're like practicing lead falls, you exhale on the fall and it gives you the sense of safety because your parasympathetic system comes online and you can get used to the sense of safety from falling. So in storytelling, you can do the same thing. Engaging the senses, smell, sight, sound. We know from like polyvagal theory and all these interpersonal neuroscience where if we just like sense the heat of somebody's shoulder next to us, if we orient to the room, that is all part of this metabolizing the current spot so that we can make responses into the future more deliberately. So over time, that's like here and now today, and also just know that you can always leave, right? If you're getting overwhelmed, it's all right. Go outside, feel the sun on your face, feel a little bit of a breeze, get back into sort of the here and now when memory's trying to pull us in these different directions. In the long term, like I said, that small sort of little process of doing this commonly will just help us integrate as we go along so we don't have to do the huge process later. Therapy and group processes are still always usually helpful, but it can help mitigate that some. Make sure I'm keeping on time here. And so finding space. This is one thing I think we oftentimes do not do often enough, is finding transition spaces. So from today, if there's some sort of transition between the end of today into the rest of your life, like rolling straight from here into family life, rolling straight from here into something else that sort of didn't give you time or space to sort of just sit. You don't even have to think consciously about what the meaning of today was. It's just a moment of pause, of transition. From your work lives, a moment of pause. Those little things that feel so negligible are actually how we integrate, because it lets our bodies sort of like make space for the next thing we're about to enter, instead of just sort of adding additive, and never able to sort of come back down again. So engage in supportive community. What we want to do when we're stressed and overwhelmed is isolate. We become more and more wanting to just protect, right? We constrict a little bit. And so doing things where you like find trusted others, find colleagues, find support networks, where you can just slowly sort of like, even when you feel like constricting, be like, I don't need to talk about the things. I just want to go on a walk with somebody, or I want to just be outside with like, it doesn't even have to be a human. I usually find a little bit more solace with just being out in the hills more than a human sometimes. So just make connection. And then eventually, that over time it becomes habit. And then taking overwhelm and shutdown, like today, things you might notice listening to some of the stories, if you find yourself wanting to sort of like check out, look at a phone, thinking about other things, are you checking out because you're overwhelmed or just because it's not interesting at that moment? And just noting to yourself, and that's not good or bad, it's just data, right? All of this is just data from our systems. So, okay, maybe I'm overwhelmed. Maybe walking outside and using a little bit of my body and movement to not just sit there and be checked out, but maybe go outside to be checked out for a second if you're overwhelmed. Those sorts of things help. All right. So, big picture though, panning back out, is that little bit of awareness of the internal territory gets turned into agency, because then we have choice, right? We have agency and choice. And when you have choice, you have hope, because hopelessness, burnout from our jobs when we feel like we can't affect change, right? That's the worst feeling ever. So when you have agency, you feel like you can affect change. That's where hope comes from. Hope builds capacity to hold both the nuance and complexity of what you're hearing today and what you all know about in your professional lives, right? It's like holding the nuance, holding the joy, right? The awe and joy. You all are at this like beautiful threshold of your work where you're pushing right up against the unknown, the uncertain, right? And so with the uncertain is the chance to have that amazing awe, but also it comes hand in hand with tragedy, with suffering. Thich Nhat Hanh's like last tour of the world before he died was about the art of suffering, right? These things come together. And so being able to metabolize allows us to hold that with more capacity. So then giving back, the Darren Johnson Memorial Fund, right? This is how we metabolize, and we know from science that if you're able to then give back, you don't have to be fully healed from events to give back. It is a part of the healing process to give back to community, just like a lot of you all do, a lot of the Alliance, the Avalanche, like all these groups are, and individuals and memorial funds are metabolizing trauma into something that becomes giving back and community interconnectedness. So I just want to give one pause to kind of like arriving today. And then this is an artist out of BC, Karen Brownie. He's a guide and an artist that I just adore. So give it 1 minute to just sort of like land where we are. So, thank you, and we're not doing questions, hey? Probably back to back more time.
Let's give it up for Darcy. Thanks.
Yeah. There.